Not favorite.
Okay, hello everybody. We are here with Barry Watson, the former Vice President of Production for FUNimation. So we're here to interview him about his job and what it was like working at FUNimation. So, if you want to tell them again your official title.
Pleasure to be here. My official title was I was Vice President of Production and later the Vice President of Business Development from about 1994 to about 2001.
Okay. Yeah. Did you do any voice acting while working there in production?
Not much. I had kind of a rule I wouldn't do a whole lot of voice acting. I am the voice of Scratch the cat, Dr. Brief's little cat that sits on his shoulder, that strange thing. And I did a lot of what we call WALA, the all actor background stuff. So if there was man A or guy B, that I would do some of that stuff. But for the most part, I let other actors take that on.
Okay.
The real actors.
Yeah. All right. In terms of back to the voice acting, how do you decide on what voice actors fit what roles?
We always did just open cattle call auditions, which was basically you have the side where they have a picture of the character and some typical lines he would say, and we would have general calls. Most of the time it was through agencies. They would have the actors come in and read, and I had heard a lot of the Japanese versions of them before. And I used that as a reference, but not strictly. It was kind of funny because, like for example with Piccolo, when we cast him up in Canada, I got hate mail like you would not believe. People hated his voice because it did not sound anything like the Japanese, blah, blah, blah. Even though on that one, I had actually sat down and listened to Scott McNeil's voice against the Japanese one-on-one. Then we brought that voice down to Dallas-Fort Worth, and we had to recast it. And so we cast another Piccolo, and I got hate letter like you would not believe because they loved the voice. Now, no one ever wrote me that they loved the voice until we recast the part. And then they were like, I love that voice, you've ruined the property, blah, 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 blah. But I never, that was kind of a lesson. You don't want to focus too much on how the Japanese are doing it, because even if you can nail the voice, it's still a different language and it doesn't sound right to those who love the original Japanese voice. So I kind of just went with the ones that sound best for what we were working for.
Okay. How's it like working with voice actors?
I love them. I generally, the thing I missed the most, the funnest part of it was just their insane creativity. A lot of what you do, you have it scripted, but we kind of kept a kind of a loose rein, so if somebody had a brilliant stroke of emotion at the time and did something really weird, you're like, okay, that works. That really neat. I can remember several screaming sessions with Sean Schimmel where he screamed until he was lightheaded and had to sit down outside and catch his breath because I thought he might faint in the booth. He was looking a little green. So yeah, but it was they're a funny bunch. They're a lot of fun to work with.
How's it like with those screaming scenes specifically? Does it just ruin their voices? Are they prepared for that sort of thing?
Well, yeah. Look, big ones like Goku. When he did his sessions, we would try and jump around to get all of his lines at the first of the session, so that the last hour or so was just him screaming. So, because you didn't want to have him scream for like an hour or two and then go back and try and deliver voices you can understand.
Well, how did you even know that was a thing? Like, is there anywhere that you have, like, on your resume, like a little tip sheet that was like, hey, get the lines first before the screaming, or was it just something? Because a lot of this stuff, you guys figured it out as you went along.
Right. Some of it, after the first time, when you have, like Sean, we might book for 3 or 4 days, and the first day he would come in and he would do like a long session and scream at the end, and then the second day he might come back a little bit hoarse, and you're like, dang it, we should not have done that. We should not have done that. Now, some of it we did get some help. When we started, we worked up in Canada, and there were some very experienced people up in Canada that had done a lot of voice work up there. They do a lot of work up in Vancouver. And so they kind of put training wheels on us and working with people like Terry Clausen and Carl Williams and some people up there that knew what they were doing. Then when we started doing it here, we emulated a little bit, and some of it was kind of learning. It's like, yeah, that's not a voice we can hold for very long. Let's not do that voice and things like that. You kind of learn it as you do it. So.
Okay. How many different shows were you involved in, and what were they?
Oh, gee. That would be hard to say. At one point I counted, I think I produced about 1,000 episodes. Now that's between, I did Dragon Ball Z, I did Full Metal Alchemist, Dragon Ball, Case Closed, and then there were a lot of stuff like Gunslinger Girls and Tenchi Muyo and several other series. I can't remember all the series. At the height of my work, when I left, right before I left, we were doing 300 half hours a year out of the show. So a lot of it, my involvement was, mostly in the casting and the original half dozen scripts or so, kind of get the look feel of it. And then for the most part, it was kind of like make sure that we get our deadlines met. And I wouldn't be in there every day to day, but I was real involved when we kicked off a series, and as big major characters were introduced. But beyond that, I kind of let the directors and the voice actors work on the day-to-day work, a lot of it. But roughly, it was about 1,000 episodes, I think, the last time I counted, something like that.
Okay. What was the best part about working for Funimation, doing your job? What did you like?
Oh, it's the creativity. It was the fact that the cool part was, a lot of times, particularly in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, there were not a lot of places you could go to be a voice actor, to do, almost nowhere right off the street could you just go be a voice actor. And when we set it up so that we did open cattle call auditions. We usually did it once every few weeks when we had a new series rolling through. And pretty much anybody could come in and do voice work. If they had a good voice, we would open it up to them. Now, some of them, they'd come in and the first couple of reads, you're like, oh no. And so you'd stop it short, but pretty much anybody could come in. And that was kind of a rare thing. And so a lot of people would not have had an opportunity to do any of that work without Funimation there. And, when you put people in front of a cartoon with a creative, funny script that our writers kicked out, and you say, be funny, be creative, it just generates a whole creativity that just kind of takes over after a while. And so, there was a lot of stuff on the camera that's hysterical. There was a lot of stuff behind the scenes that were hysterical, that people were always pulling practical jokes and things like that to kind of keep people energized and involved. Because 8 hours of doing voice work can be a long time. And so you're always doing these things to kind of keep people laughing and engaged and funny, and new people coming in. It was just a fun, creative place to work.
That's great. Did you ever think that Funimation would be as big or as popular as it is now?
Oh, no. I mean, when we started, we went from our whole first year, we made like one show, and it was just like the Dragon Ball movie. That was the whole first year, just trying to get our feet wet. Then we did 13. When we thought we had 52, we went straight up, we had 52 episodes. That was a big, big deal. It was a game changer. So, the whole 15 years or 14 years or whatever was there was just a constant series of surprises. Really? Wow, really? So, no, I never thought we'd be nearly that big.
Cool. Let's see. Now, this is in terms of like manga versus anime. What did you do to have to balance the thin line between the culture differences and things like the age appropriateness of the manga versus the anime? I know that's more of the Japanese anime production studios that did that, but what did you have to do here?
Between the manga and the anime? In general, and that's why if you read online, a lot of people just hate me, and that's okay. But when I started, there wasn't this thing of anime. It was really a closet niche, if you would, a niche of closet hardcore fans, and it was not very big at all. If you look at and when we kind of rolled out in '94, pretty much going up into there, the only anime that you could put your finger on television was like Power Rangers, and then you'd have to go back to something like Sailor Moon. And most of the time, people didn't even realize, like, I mean, not Sailor Moon, Speed Racer. And most of the time, people didn't even know Speed Racer was an anime property, that it came from Japan. I mean, why he had an M on his shirt, no one knows. But it was a cartoon, and you referred to things as cartoons. And Power Rangers was not referred to as an anime title. It was referred to as a cartoon. The whole genre of anime kind of took off. We rolled out with Dragon Ball, and Sailor Moon was being rolled out, at the same year. I remember we were doing 13, they were doing 52, and so, that was kind of the kickoff for some anime. And it was after that you had all your Inuyashas and all your other stuff that kind of rolled out a lot more of. But back when we started, it was cartoons. And in the industry, there were a lot of people who looked at the anime like, yeah, I've seen that stuff from Japan for a long time. They really didn't know that they were interested in it at all. And our goal was to make a cartoon people want to watch. And that's what I focused on the first few years that I worked on it, was making a cartoon people wanted to watch. And, you couldn't go online like you can now and just get, 300 episodes of Dragon Ball Z. It just was not there. When we started with Dragon Ball Z, for example, I didn't have scripts from Japan. I didn't have any of those scripts. So they sent me what we had purchased. We purchased 13 shows. They sent me 13 translated scripts. And when I say translated scripts, they were about half a page in length for a 30-minute show. It was really, really crude. It was like Higher Dragon, Lord God, or whatever. And it didn't make any sense. You're looking at the show and the script didn't make any sense. So you go on the internet and you find out kind of what you could, and it was really a few action figures of a character that doesn't appear until episode 200. I mean, maybe Cell or Janemba or somebody doesn't appear until episode 200. And you're like, well, how does this relate to the first 30 episodes? So a lot of it was kind of just winging it for a while till we actually got where we were making shows, and we'd get a larger number of scripts. It got a little more popular. People would start writing in. And then a lot of people were like, no, that's not true to the Japanese. And they came out of the woodwork and they're like, no, that's not what it said in Japan. Okay, well, I believe you, but where were you like 3 years ago when we started this episode?
It's like that you've made it big whenever people start hating you a little. It's like
know
that you're actually doing something right because people are all of a sudden like, ah!
It was the best of in the world of both worlds. Was anime fans were so loyal and they were so passionate that a lot of doors were open, because literally if they loved you, they would write 8,000 letters to cartoon studios going, that show rocks, how come you pulled that from the time slot, blah, blah, blah. And they would write 8,000 shows. On the other hand, if they didn't like something you did, it would be 8,000 letters right to you. I literally had a 90-page hate letter one time. I remember that. 90 full, handwritten 90-page hate letter about everything I had done wrong with the show. And if you see this, good on you. That was awesome. I read it. I thought, wow, this is like a college dissertation and good for you. And that was awesome. But it was really, you had to have some thick skin, because they did not mince words when they loved it or hated it. And most of the response I got, I didn't know you loved it until I changed it. That's kind of the way it went. So I would hear a lot more hate than I did love until after the fact. So, but it was all fun. But I forgot what even the question was. How do we relate to the manga?
Yeah. I know you had to change some small things.
Well, also people didn't realize, and they were even about the whole thing, was we're going on network TV, and network TV you had censors. You had network censors that would control what you could say. And literally, I had the phone number for the network censor. We worked out a deal where I would run it by their censor that would proofread things beforehand. I would send her a script and a episode beforehand, and she would say, I don't like this, I don't like that, I don't like this. And so, like, I can remember one scene that I got lots of letters on about, I think it's Vegeta, when he points his finger and it literally blows up a planet. This is going on for kids' TV Saturday morning. Got the guy blowing up a planet, and the network censor's not real keen on blowing up planets for kids in front of prime TV. So she's like, "How are we going to do this? Can't do it, whatever." So we made some little. I appeased her by coming up with something like, "Well, we'll say something like, that planet's deserted." How about if I say something like, "That's just a worthless planet, it's deserted," and then we'll blow it up. Everybody's gone from that. Well, yeah, that'd work. So we got that by. Of course, in the big scheme of things, it doesn't make sense why Vegeta's on a planet. He goes up into space, he looks at this planet that we are claiming is now deserted and blows it up. Looks a little weird. Tons of people wrote me that was the stupidest thing they'd ever seen. But on the other hand, how are you going to get it on network television, basically, without just totally cutting the scene out and butchering the whole thing? So it was kind of a,
In general, the censors they're opposed to genocide. In general,
that's
not.
They frown upon genocide, and
Vegeta's super into that.
So there's a lot of stuff on the shows that if you look at them, there'll be like some throwaway line where Vegeta will say something like, or we'll have some little canned background, "Quick, evacuate the city, evacuate the city," and then like 10 minutes later, Vegeta blows up the city. And you're like, okay, well that may have been cheesy, but it got the show pulled together and it all works. And so did you want to see the show or did you not want to see the show or see it all edited out? And so we just kind of struck a compromise in a lot of the shows with ways, and sometimes it worked, sometimes it was actually even worse. There were a couple times where they said, "Oh, we can't have him punched in the face like that. That's horrible." And yeah, okay, well, how about if we just do a cutaway or something? Well, I mean, everybody in film editing knows that you cut away sometimes and you hear a big thud. Sometimes that's even more graphic than if you see like a lame punch in the face. I mean, sometimes you hear a big thud and you're like, wow, that sounded horrible. So, sometimes it worked, sometimes it was really lame-o, and you just did what you had to do to get the 52 shows made, basically. And fortunately, we always made the uncut versions available too, so we could go see it the way it was originally written, if you wanted to pay the extra $3 for the uncut, or whatever it was at the time. So that's kind of our way of working around it was, here's what we had to do to get it on air. If you're under the age of 8 or 10 or whatever it is, then you can get this version. And if you're over 12 and you want to see the older version, it's available to you.
Okay.
I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, I think it did.
There was the other story you had told about with letters on a shirt.
On the shirt.
HFIL, everybody out there who knows Dragon Ball Z knows that show. I've gotten enough flack from that. But we sat down and we looked at that, and this guy's got an HELL written on his shirt, the two guys that are demons on the thing. And so we look at it, and in this introduction, I can remember sitting with my paint artists who were in charge of literally painting out everything on the animation that wasn't good. And you're just, oh my gosh, this is like hours and hours and hours of paint work. To take the HELL off their shirt would have just been hours and hours and hours and hours of paint. And I'm like, I can't make the season. It's going to take us like 9 months to do this paint work, and it's supposed to be airing like in 3 months. So I don't know how you're going to do this, except just cut like entire episodes. And then somebody had the bright idea that, you know what, this is, if you look straight on, you see the HELL, but most of the scenes are him running down the road or him jumping up down. You only see a side shot, so you only see like an L, part of an H or something like that. So we don't really have to paint all of it, we could leave those H, maybe we could just alter the middle, like maybe we could say something like HALL or something like that. And we started thinking about that and thought, well, the best case scenario is if we just change like just the lower letter of the E. Just change that to an HFIL. That's the least amount of work. And even then it was still like, I don't know, like 300 hours of paint. It was a ridiculous amount. But well, we could do that then. But why is this guy walking around with HFIL on his shirt? That just looks stupid. I said, hey, if we came up with an acronym that said HFIL, then it makes sense for him to walk around with that on his shirt. And so that's where the whole HFI, Home for Infinite Losers, was what it finally came down to. HFIL, it had to do with the amount of paint you had to do to get it on air. And so sold that by the network censors, we got the paint, it all got done, and to this day, I still get letters, or get people who run into me in the street and go, what was that HFIL deal like? That was so lame. Anyway, that's the dirty, dark secret behind that little bit. So now it's out.
But that was one of the things about the whole process is that you guys were making that decision on the fly. You guys were all sitting around being like, oh man, like what can we brainstorm?
Those are creative, just ballparking it. And this is a story no one knows. I wish I have looked, before I left, I looked for these tapes and I could not find them. Before we actually went to air, it was one of those catch-22. We had to run it by a network censor. And we're like, and the network censor did not want to read a script. They said, well, the script doesn't mean anything. I have to see it on video to know if it's good or not good. And we're like, well, I'm not going to go through and record a half-hour show just so you can then watch it and say, no, that's not good. That doesn't make any sense to anybody. Then I'm going to have to go back and pay to have the whole thing rerun. So what we did was we did the quickest way we could just literally read a script on footage beforehand so the network censor could see it with the pictures. And we didn't pay to have that done in the studios. We didn't have that in front of the booth. That was 5 o'clock in the afternoon, me and the editor and a couple of other guys who were working late that we just pulled into a room. And I said, I'm going to take Yamcha and Bulma, you take Goku, you take Johan. And we just grabbed the script, hit the record button, and read through it. And the funniest thing was we were doing this with the character voices just so we know a little bit. So we were kind of reading it going, quick, Yamcha, get the runner. No, I can't do that. And we would just record it like we tried never to hit the stop button. Just let it go completely. Just never hit the stop button because we wanted to get it done as quick as possible. And somewhere in the ether, there is floating around me and Moses and all these other people just sitting there recording. I guess the entire Dragon Ball scene is done with just really, really bad voices going, Yamcha, I think you're cute. Oh, Bulma, no. And we're just reading it. It's the worst. But those were hysterical because it was just insane what came out. And I wish I could find those to this day.
And they're nowhere in this building.
I don't know anywhere. I've looked for those and I've never found them to this day. So they're probably in one of the guys' closet somewhere. I don't know where they are, but yeah.
Well, that's the other thing about this whole thing is we're still in the same.
It's like the last time I worked here, the studios were actually here, and so now, they moved the studios over to another location. So now I walk in, I see like a conference room where back in the day there was like a voice acting booth and a big console and like editing gear and all this other stuff. And I'm like, wow, this is just strange, feels hollow. It's like walking into an abandoned building now because there's not all this equipment. But, I've been pretty much everywhere in this building now, so I feel like I'm probably a fixture at this point. So like furniture.
Right, you've had an office in every.
An office in almost every building, every office in this building, and a couple of closets.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think it's time to end this little interview.
It has been fun. Thank you, Kiara.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
Thanks for being on this interview. So,
Yay. Get Allcal.